SJ, Stongo, Gary Fife, Jaho Jifkados, Mvskoke Radio, Mabo Hedges. Welcome to our program here today. We're going to be doing something slightly different from our usual format. We are welcoming into the studio Ms. Carmen Bruner, who is a jazz gospel singer who has been performing around in our area and has a CD or so out. She'll be sharing her music with me today and a little bit about what's going on. And then later in the program, my boss, Angel Ellis, had recently taken her family on a trip down south to the homelands and was quite touched by what she encountered there. But first of all, let's get started with Ms. Bruner. Thank you. Is it Carmen okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, try that again.
Good morning, Gary.
Okay, it might help if your microphone is
Okay.
turned on. Now, for those folks who aren't familiar with you, let's start off with an introduction. Like, who are you? Where's your family from? Little things like that.
Okay, yes. Thank you for having me today. My name is Carmen Bruner, and I am from Bristow, Oklahoma, and that's where I grew up. I was originally born in Tulsa, but moved to Bristow when I was around 4. So that's where I went to school, was reared. I was raised in a musical family. My mother, she plays the piano. She actually plays the piano for our church, Rogers Chapel, which is in Slick. So we've heard music all of our lives growing up. So myself and my 3 brothers, we grew up, and, she taught us how to harmonize, and so we would travel around in different areas, local churches, and sing gospel. We were known as the Bruner kids, the Bruner family.
Wonderful. Now, most rural areas have a heavy influence from the church on musical styles in those areas now.
Yes.
Did the gospel material compete with, say, country and western or something else?
Not really.
You blend them together?
We're a multicultural family. So we we were encouraged to enjoy and take all of it in. So that's what makes us so unique. And I'm very grateful for that.
I can imagine, yeah, both of my parents were singers too, and they encouraged me to get into music. But
Nice.
dumb kid here didn't want to practice anything, so he never really took it any further, much to my regret, I have to admit. Now, we have, I think, been thinking about your, quote, career and the kind of material that you share, and it sort of reminded me of some others other nationally known international singers who had started off with their roots in church music, as we used to call it, and then moved on to other more popular styles and became quite successful like that. Do you ever make any personal comparisons or think about how that happened for those other folks?
Not really. I mean, I enjoy the stories of how other people tend to grow into their musical stylings. I myself, I just, like I said earlier, I'm very grateful of my mother kind of surrounding us with all different types of genres of music. And so, but jazz for me kind of hit me right in the heart. And so we listen to jazz, we listen to rock, we listen to blues, we listen to country, we listen to a lot of gospel. But I would say when I decided to venture into jazz, it was probably in my junior high years, and I had a music teacher, and so he had me to sing a solo, and that solo was New York, New York. And so that's what really got me started. And I just kind of looked into jazz more. And then, so since we live on a farm, right, and we have cattle and horses, so there was a lady that always would come and teach me how to barrel ride. So she was into jazz, and that was unique. So all the time we would travel together, and she would turn on Georgia Benson. And I tell you, I just, that was it for me. So
Right.
that's when I decided.
Barrel racer, huh? And get a lot of busted kneecaps.
Oh, most definitely.
Okay. My parents were similarly inclined. They had a lot of, religious type music. I think about Mahalia Jackson and
Yes.
some of those. And then others like Aretha Franklin or even Donna Summer, who started there in the church.
Yes.
And got a good foundation, and then moved on to what they wanted to perform.
Right.
Now we're going to share a bit of your work here. I think the first selection I've got pulled up is an old standard that I think everyone has known. This has been copied, covered, thousands of times, and that's
Correct. That's correct.
Summertime.
Yes. Summertime.
Okay. Well, let's take 5 here and
Okay.
share some of that.
Okay. Well,
Summertime and the living is easy. Fish are jumping and the cotton is high. Your daddy's rich and your ma is good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. One of these mornings, you're gonna rise up singing. You spread your wings and fly to the sky. Until that morning, nothing can harm you. Your mama and your daddy standing by.
Now, before I get carried away and dedicate the whole show to that one tune, we wanted to ask you a few things about the selection. Now, that Summertime comes from a Broadway musical, is that correct?
that is correct. It was
Porgy and Bess.
Porgy and Bess.
Right.
That's right.
That's how old I am, folks.
Yes, that's an excellent musical. It was written by the Gershwin brothers.
And just off the top of your head, how many other artists do you think have covered that?
I would say probably at least 1,000.
All kinds of different musical styles, and I think probably the last one I heard was Janis Joplin doing it.
Oh, wow.
And that raw emotional voice of hers, and,
Yes.
how she reached, and then you hear other more slick, lounge, easy listening kind of things, and then I've
Right.
heard big bands do it and things like that. Now, how would you describe the type of jazz, quote unquote, that you share? I know there's a lot of different styles and people who have taken different directions. And jazz, I don't think, can be labeled very well. It has so many incarnations.
That is correct.
How would you describe what you do? Now, like I'm thinking, there are just real hardcore jazz guys, take a sax and run up and down the keys, and you think, oh my God, what is that? And it's hard to follow because it doesn't have the musical patterns we're used to. And then you've got real slow and easy ones, like yourself and oh gosh, what's Elvis Costello's wife? What's her name? Gosh, I'll think of it in a minute. But she had a version of it too, more slow, bluesy kind of really emotional piece.
Okay.
So when you think about this particular song and your performances and things, how would you describe what you do there?
I would say, Gary, well, because there's so many subgenres of jazz, it's all to me very melodic. I enjoy it all. What I do is, I would say, a variety of jazz. There is the smooth jazz, like you're talking about. There's also contemporary. There's traditional, like the old style and back in the 20s, and But for me, I like it all, and then you get into the scatting, and just it's all improvisation, and that's why I like jazz.
It's challenging sometimes to listen to if you're not used to it.
Yes.
And you're thinking, what's going on? Why can't they, finish that bar and
Right.
play something that I know?
Yes.
Others just absolutely love it,
Yes.
and are quite dedicated to that kind of feel. The inspiration for you to expand in this direction, what was that spark?
Again, I would say at the young age when I was exposed to jazz, it just kind of just stuck there. Most people say it's an acquired taste. I say it's kind of like, say that you're listening to opera for the first time. It's either going to grab you because of the emotion that's built in, or you're just not going to like it at all. So that's kind of how it happened for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
When you mentioned opera, I was thinking, yeah, that's pretty much the way I describe it. It's either, you appreciate the abilities and the skills and the gifts that these singers are blessed with.
Absolutely.
And, you hear a Pavarotti or something and just belt out, this incredible aria. And then you hear, the women who control such an incredible vocal range. Can
Yes.
get, way up there in the...
I know it. It's
things
very,
like-
they're amazing.
Yeah, and then the same thing, can drop down into the lower octaves and control it all the way up and down.
Right.
And still sing and remember the lyrics.
Exactly.
How do you do it? You're on stage for an hour singing, and how do you
Yes.
keep it all together?
Yes.
The way they do it is amazes me.
And all the while they're telling that story, and so you're just pulled in by it.
Yeah. Now, as you perform, say, a summertime or another one we'll share, is there anything that goes through your mind as you sing, trying to remember the next stanza, or is it purely an emotional ride?
I would say it is mostly emotional because you're telling a story and you want that person to feel that emotion as you're singing it. You want them to get in that place as you're sharing your emotions, your character, the vocals, all of that. So you want them to enjoy the performance.
I'm thinking now the different directions it's gone. Of course, there's also the Broadway versions of many things, what was it? Phantom of the Opera caught my attention there.
Oh, okay.
Emily Rossum.
Uh-huh.
It just knocked me out. Just the ability to reach as far up as she can and then bring it back down.
Yes.
Not miss a beat.
I know.
Keep it completely clear and solid. How would you describe the ability to do that? I mean, what makes it work for you, I guess, is maybe what I'm asking.
Well, you definitely have to have the desire to hold your gift. You have to expand it with education and plenty of vocal exercises. It just takes practice, really, in order to have that control, so you can make those beautiful sounds.
Yeah, I'm thinking, there's the diaphragm and
Most
breathing.
definitely. And you're right. You're correct. It's all about breathing. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, even on radio occasionally. Or we have another piece here that we're going to share with you, a piece called Fragile. Why don't you tell me about that real quick?
Okay, Fragile for me, when I first heard it, Gary, it was actually written by Sting in 1988. It was written because of a tragedy that happened a year before. It was about a young engineer that went into the Peace Corps. His name was Ben Linder, and when he was sent to Nicaragua to build hydroplanes for the villages that were too poor to have water. So that's what his purpose was there for, and it was a tragedy because he was shot down and murdered by Contra rebels, and of course, all of that's in the politics, which I don't get into. But his purpose to reach for, because he had it in his heart to go abroad and help people. That's really what the whole song is about. And so when Sting is writing this song about him, when he's mentioning when flesh and steel are one, and that is how he was shot down. But it touched my heart, and it was always a song I wanted to cover. So I'm just glad I had the opportunity to do that.
Blood will flow when flesh and steel are one, drying in the color of the evening sun. Tomorrow's rain will wash the stains away, but something in our minds will always stay. Perhaps this final act was meant to clinch a lifetime argument. Nothing comes from violence, and nothing ever could. For all those born beneath an angry star, lest we forget how fragile we are. On and on the rain will fall, like tears from a star, like tears from a star. On and on the rain will say how fragile we are, how fragile we are. On and on.
Little fancy crossfade there. Yeah. Background that you come from, is very strong in Mvskoke culture.
Yes, sir.
And where does that fit into your life, and perhaps how does it affect your music?
It comes in where I realize that because I am multicultural, and so it allows me to understand more of my native people, and also it allows me to do to be very versatile, actually. So there's, like I said, because we grew up that way with so many different genres of music, that's what's instilled inside of me. So it kind of matches up in my DNA. I have always admired Native American people. And of course, being so young, before I even got into jazz, I really didn't know much about that. We weren't members of Creek Nation, but we lived by the creek, sort of thing. But I'm very proud, and I feel that my purpose, along with my music, maybe I can make a difference somewhere. Music is so healing in so many ways, and we need that, especially in our culture. We have different things that we have to deal with. But with music, sometimes it allows us to make our day a little easier, or make that struggle a little easier.
Well, speaking of struggles, I always do this other side of the coin thing. Did your choices plural here, ever present any challenge, like either from Mvskoke people or the world in general, or perhaps parishioners who thought maybe you might not want to look at that? It wasn't, a pure gospel kind of thing. Did that ever pop up in any form or anything like that?
It pops up every day. It's actually a part of my life. Being a minority, you have to always try to present yourself according to how we're made. And I always like to reference, going back to the Bible, we are wonderfully made. So we always have to remember that every time we come up against things that, or people or situations that don't welcome us. So we try to overcome every day.
Right, okay. Let's go back again to performing and being on stage. I flirted briefly with the rock and roll band when I was a kid.
Okay.
Just had a wonderful time, when your band's really cooking and
Yes.
you know the thing is just right.
Mm-hmm.
And you check it with your audience and they're out there dancing and getting sweaty and having a good time. What's that? How does that show up for you, like when you're on stage singing?
It's like it's the same. It's the same type of feeling. It's like you're in the zone of it all, and you're pouring yourself and your soul into what you're trying to portray or bring out to someone else. So that's really what it is for me. So it's the same.
Okay, well, I tell you what, let's share a little bit more of this, and we'll just sit back and enjoy for a second.
Thank you.
Like tears from a star, like tears from a star. On and on the rain will say how fragile we are, how fragile we are. Will flow when flesh and steel are one, drying in the colors of the evening sun. Tomorrow's rain will wash the stains away, but something in our minds will always stay.
When you hear yourself like that again, does something come to mind, or you think, "Oh, I should have done this, or hit that note, or paused a little second"? I mean, do you ever become your own critic?
All the time, all the time. We are our own worst critic. But the key thing is not to overthink what you're trying to create, and just let it come from the heart.
Right. Now, you've been working at this for how long now?
Well, I've been singing, of course, since I was 6. But I actually got the opportunity, just here recently, about maybe a couple of years ago, And well, I take that back, maybe 4 years ago. And prior to that, that's when some of the songs that I had written that I had released today, I've written them about 25 years ago in my 20s. And so I just kind of, I'll just say it wasn't the right time.
Sure.
So everything's put on the shelf, life happens. But when God presented that opportunity to me a few years back, I was gung-ho, and just grateful. So when I hear myself, that's just, it's like, sometimes I just say, I have no regrets, because it comes out as it comes out.
Do you think God likes jazz?
Most definitely.
Most definitely.
That's right.
And what was a song years ago? It said, Heaven's got one, quote, hell, unquote, of a band. Renault, these people did.
Yes.
Now, the reason I asked that last question was, are you performing either locally or nationally, or do you have any recording sessions coming up? Any
Not too
appearances?
long ago, I did perform at the Fayetteville Jazz Festival. That was back in the end of April. I don't have anything pending as of yet, but some things are coming in as we speak. So I'm excited. I do have an EP out, and it's entitled Carmen Bruner, and you can find that on all digital platforms.
Wonderful. That's good that it's there. Then if it takes off, you think you'll spend a lot of time doing it, dedicated, or would that compete with your own private life?
I hope so. I'm looking for that to happen.
Excuse me there, and
But,
paycheck or two, yeah.
But it's okay. I think I can find a way to balance it all.
Okay, well, I tell you what, let's, I'm just blown away by this music, so let's see if we can't fit a little bit more in.
Oh, thank you.
Your daddy's rich and your ma is good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. One of these mornings you're gonna rise up singing. You spread your wings and fly to the sky. Until that morning, nothing can harm you. Your mama and your daddy standing by.
So, welcome to the Jazz Hour here on KOKL. It's a format they don't run too often around here. As the, popularity, how is that measured for you? Is it a lot of people know about it? Is it still being discovered?
It's still being discovered, although I am being heard all around the world. And I correspond with DJs daily from Japan, South Africa, Germany, Australia. So it's pretty exciting. So
there is quite a network of Native American public stations, stations on reservations around the nation. Do you connect with them? Do they use your material?
Well, see, I didn't know about that. And now that I do,
Ta-da.
I will start. That's right.
Okay.
And I appreciate that.
Hey, no charge.
All right.
You can look them up, Native American Public Broadcasting, something like that.
Okay.
I actually used to be on their board when I was that involved.
Nice.
But hopefully they'll be able to pick up your material and share it.
Yes.
Now, where do you hope to go with this? Do you have a goal, or are you just kind of taking it as it hits?
Just kind of taking it as it comes because, as we spoke of earlier, if I'm bombarded with anything, I'm ready for it.
Bombarded?
Yes, that's a good word.
Well, maybe you should talk to the people at the festival. They're always looking for musical acts, and I keep after them to use more native talent. Come on, guys, are you listening?
Yes. Well, I am available.
Okay, and hopefully something they can afford.
Yes.
Okay, well,
We're praying. Yes.
well, I'll tell you what, we'll do some more music here,
Okay.
and we'll wrap this up and say adios.
If blood will flow when flesh and steel are one, drying in the color of the evening sun, tomorrow's rain will wash the stains away, but something in our minds will always stay. Perhaps this final act was meant to clinch a lifetime argument. Nothing comes from violence, and nothing ever could. For all those born beneath an angry star, lest we forget how fragile we are. On and on the rain will fall, like tears from a star, like tears from a star. On and on the rain will say how fragile we are, how fragile we are. On and on the rain will
Carmen, let me ask you one more question before
Sure.
we let you go here.
Okay.
What is it about the human voice that reaches us so deeply?
Well, as they say, even while you're in the mother's womb, that's something that's a deep connection. So we're always drawn to something that is so caring, nurturing. So I think that's what it is. It's very special. Very special.
There's hardly anything else that can touch you as deeply as the voice. Carmen Bruner, thank you so much for making time to join us today. We hope you have much success in this career, and hopefully we'll be hearing more of your voice around in the area, and we'll keep an eye out and see what you're up to.
Okay, well, I appreciate you, Gary, and always appreciate the support of the nation, and I'm here if you need me.
Okay, well, you never know.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this is Gary 5 Jaho Jefkedos. We're going to take a short pause here in Mvskoke Radio and be back with my boss and talking about a trip to the homeland that probably touched her heart. So stay with us here on Mvskoke Radio.
but nothing comes from violence, and nothing ever could. All those born beneath.
Welcome back to Mvskoke Radio here on The Brew, 106.3 FM and 1240 AM here in the heart of beautiful Okmulgee. Now, joining me here in the studio is my colleague and actual boss here, Angel Ellis. Thanks for coming in. We appreciate you making time here.
Oh, I'm glad to be back in. I always love coming and visiting the radio.
Okay, now, the reason we have you here today is you took a trip back to the homeland, and I think we're touched by the experience, and that's what we want to share today. So, first of all, where did you go and why?
So I took a trip with my kids, and one of my kids' friends came along with us. So four of us went to Macon, Georgia, to visit the Okmulgee Mounds there in Macon, Georgia, and the Okmulgee River. Kind of just looking to see those original, homelands and learn more. And I would say the major thing about the trip, and this was something that I had kind of planned in advance, it was kind of for like a healing purpose. I come from a family that wasn't always really well connected to our culture, and having grown up and come to work for the tribe, and you see just exactly what assimilation policies do to families. We have like my family, who no one in the family could have taught us the language if they wanted to, because that was lost to us. And so I think that what I was really looking to do was to kind of heal those missing links. And I'm a purpose-driven person who has tried to set out with intentions to everything. And so when I started toying around with the idea of taking this trip, I really was asking myself, like, what is it that I want and need from it when I take off on this journey? And what I was really looking for in the beginning was the confidence that I needed to assume this role for my family as someone who could help perpetuate the culture to the next generation, right? So as a person who doesn't always have all the information and doesn't have all those connections, it's hard to sometimes ask or even know where to ask, to be educated. So I was looking for the confidence to kind of reaffirm my role as this leader in my family who would be a healing link to our past. Because, it's not just me and my kids that I need to educate. I also have, a grandmother who was disconnected from the culture. So in some small ways, I'm kind of helping reconnect this chain to our history. And sometimes that can be really daunting, right? Like when you don't know where to start. So I thought taking this trip would everyone I'd spoke to has had tremendous experiences, and they come back with an imbued sense of, purpose, and they're driven to learn more. So that's what I was really hunting when we set off for this journey.
Yeah, I think for many of us, yours truly included, when you want to regain culture in some fashion, mm-hmm. whether it's language or perhaps a connection with spiritual powers, you have to admit that you lack. You don't have it for various reasons. Mm-hmm. Perhaps your family was disjointed at an early age, or you were just being a mean little kid and didn't want to learn nothing.
Right, and there's possibility that I was that ornery little stubborn kid too, and didn't have, because I did have uncles who were a little bit knowledgeable, but I lost them, and I feel like as I got older, I looked back and wished that I had them, and I wish that I had their knowledge to glean from now. And so that's where I've been in these last several years of my life, just kind of acknowledging what I don't know could fill up the Grand Canyon pretty much, right? And that's a really good place to kind of start, I think, to rebuild. Because if you come into this journey of trying to learn with some sense of pride and ego and things like that, then it usually ends badly, right? Like, people don't really respond to entitlement or anything like that. They respond more to genuine intentions. And so that's what it was about for me, was to get those intentions aligned and to really acknowledge what I just didn't know. Because as a child, I'd been to Georgia before, and my uncle was stationed in Valdosta. We went to visit him, and we'd basically drove right by these ancient mounds that our ancestors built, and I had no idea about that. And so now that I'm aware, I feel like there's this like responsibility to myself to seek out what I do have the ability to find, right? So I felt convicted of that in a way. I think that's kind of the way that like somebody who's convicted with like religion or spirit, would tell it. And that's, I just felt that I felt that need to do it. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to help, reconnect my children to where they've come from, I need to do it in the most basic way I can and start off with, I don't know anything, and we're going to take this trip and we're going to learn something. And I just needed a break too. So sometimes you just need to get out of town. But leading up to this trip, I started talking to people, and I was realizing that people have a variety of experiences, and I got really excited for that because some folks had told me that, they went in a time where it wasn't very busy and that they heard or felt some kind of, presence. And I was like, okay, if I am going to have some kind of experience, like really think about what I'm trying to do, before I even take off, right? Like what I'm trying to do is learn and spark interest for my children to learn, to be a catalyst to healing, basically that lack of knowledge and how that's impacted my family. So we were packing and getting all set to go, and the days were getting counted down, and I started noticing this really odd kind of, I guess to me it's a phenomenon, but other people have told me that they've, that this is kind of a spiritual thing too. When I started preparing for my trip, anytime I looked at the clock, it seemed like I was noticing it was 4:44. Like the day before I was packing, I was getting all flustered, making sure, that I'm getting things done on time, and we're going to take off on this really big long trip tomorrow. And I look at the clock and it's 4:44 in the afternoon. And I was like, oh, well, I've heard that that's a thing where if you look at the clock, that means, and you've noticed this 4:44 number, it's a sign that you're in tune or you're being looked over by good intentions and stuff. And so I kind of just took that as an opportunity to not only be aware and have my intentions, but I started really thinking about how my trip is different than the trip that our ancestors made. I was packing the car and I was making decisions about, which things to take and what not to take. And I really kind of placed myself into a spot where I was thinking outside of my own self and more in terms of like, what would it have been like for our ancestors making this long trek, and how different my experience is right now compared to theirs. I'm taking off with a car and all the clothing that I need, and I have the food that I'm going to need, and my kids are taken care of, and there's not a lot to really be worried about, right? Like I kind of, in that mindset, it squashed a lot of my anxiety, because when I started thinking of it in those terms, I realized, how fortunate I am. And I was really imbued with a sense of gratitude that I could even take this trip. And so my normal, oh my gosh, I'm getting ready to go somewhere very far away, didn't seem so bad. And I kind of felt more peaceful about it. Then the very next morning, as we're getting ready to take off, and this never happens because I am not an early morning person usually, but I woke up at 4:44 in the morning, and I was like a kid on Disneyland Day. I was ready to go. I was kind of just waiting for the kids to wake up and be ready, and we had the car loaded, and I was like, there's that number again, and this number 4 is a sacred number, to Mvskoke people. And I was like, this might be another good sign that I'm doing what I need to do, and I'm doing it for the reasons I need to do it. So we took off on the road. We were having a great time. There's 4 of us in the car, 4 of us Mvskoke citizens in the car. And I was like, there it is again, And I really got into a lot of introspection on the drive. Like, drives can do that to you, right? And the kids have their earbuds in and they're in their phones. And I thought even more about how different this journey is. I know exactly where I'm going. My ancestors did not. When they took off on their journeys, it wasn't for reasons of want to. It was under very, very conflicting circumstances. And I looked in my, in the rearview mirror, and I see the girls in the back seat kind of nodding off because, they're bored or whatever. And I felt a lot of responsibility in that moment to be a person who helps them understand the difference between these journeys that, our ancestors made and that we're making today. And it just kind of laid on my heart really heavily then that this was another of the big reasons that I needed to do this little vacation with my family, was so that they understand, because they haven't had the exposure to their culture like, I'm missing now in my 40s. Here they are, young people, and they're on that same path, and I need to do something about that.
Let me ask you this. You recounted a lot of feelings, I think, that many of us have experienced or shared in some form or another. What was it, or how perhaps did you feel when you finally got there? I mean, when you actually put your feet on the same grounds that Mvskoke people had known traditionally, had walked themselves, lived and died, laughed and cried. What did it feel like to you?
Oh my gosh, going there and actually standing on that same piece of land where I knew our ancestors had built this vast and, complex, society, was just the most peaceful and grounding experience I've ever had in my life. All of the different things that had been going on, in the background of my mind just went away. Oh, no, you don't have to worry about stopping to get gas or when you're going to eat lunch or, if the reservations are going to. It was just there, and it was anchoring me in that space and time. And it felt like I could walk taller just having the understanding that who I came from was this wonderfully advanced society, and that was ancient, and they had knowledge that they passed down year after year to their young people, and that sustained me to live in that moment right then and there. That's how great, this community was, that every attempt in the world to eradicate them didn't work, and I have the ability right now to stand on this soil where my ancestors stood. Man, nothing is more empowering than that, and you kind of realize that everything you've ever really sweated, all that small potato stuff just kind of fades away, and it was so peaceful and beautiful, and I just was even impressed that my children and their friend was picking up on this. There was a sense of calm and awe that came over even the teenagers in the group, and that doesn't happen a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, as this began to happen, were there, best way I could describe this is spiritual experiences that you had there, or perhaps your children? I remember a few years ago when they had commemorated Horseshoe Bend, and we sent a lot of our media team down there to cover that, and they came back with stories of things that weren't easily explained, or the feelings that overcame them. Now, without getting too cosmic here, did you have that sort of experience? Was it just a quick spark or something, or?
I actually did have this experience, and it all centered around the environment and the number 4. It's that number 4 was a reoccurring theme in this entire trip that we made. The first thing we saw when we came into the park were 4 deer kind of grazing, and one looked up at us. We got even out of the car, and normally, you see deer and they're the tiniest breath of a sound and they're off and going.
Right.
These 4 deer stood there and like looked at us. We looked at them, and we were amazed by them being 10 feet away and just being so calm and cool and collected. And we were like, they're trying to like wrap our mind around that. Like there's 4, and like my kids were starting to notice that theme of 4 too. Like my son even said to me that morning, he was like, I think the car's like clock is broke or something. Every time I look at it, it's 4:44, either the morning or the evening. And we went on into the park and went to the Great Mound, and this was the most like beautiful, serene atmosphere too. Sun shining and bright. It was hot. It was really, really hot, but it was still beautiful. And there was just monarch butterflies and dragonflies everywhere. And we were climbing up the stairway of the Great Mound, and I looked over at this like pool of water, and there's 4 heron just kind of, like there were 3, and then the 4th came and stepped down, and they were, milling around in the water. And so there was another reaffirmation of the sacred number 4. And my daughter and I were wandering around on the top of the mound, and she kind of like grabbed my hand, being real quiet, and wanted me to look. She had these 2 dragonflies laying on both of her shoulders, and it was just kind of like, it felt like there was something from the past just reaching out and letting us know that we were there for a reason, and that our purpose was one that warranted acknowledgement. Like even the nature around us was part of this universal, like, yes, you did need to be here, you needed to come here, you needed to see, you needed to learn, and you needed to heal. And it was just like our ancestors were embracing us through that message. And the kids were just gobsmacked by going in and seeing the different artifacts and stuff. My son's a fisherman, and he was just going kind of nerd about how wonderful their fish hooks were and how they did that. And to think, my daughter was like, this is so ancient, the dating of this mounds and this land and how they were built really was just illuminated the best by being able to go into that first mound where you can walk in and you see the bird there and the shape, at the very center, and these graduated different spots come down and around in a perfect circle. And there's the clay floor. That's the original clay floor, and that your ancestors touched that. And it was just, gosh, I couldn't even describe how incredible that feels to know.
Let me interrupt you right there. Now, I'm going to say maybe I know I've had a small experience like that, where you are in a spot where our ancestors were, whether they were our tribe or somebody else's. Mm-hmm. And I'm reaching out to touch this cave painting that has not been reported. Mm-hmm. Park Service didn't know where this stuff was. And as you touched it, you feel like, this is the same thing that this artist did how many hundreds and thousands of years ago. And for a second there, I think I felt a little bit of electricity run through it. Mm-hmm. And I said, my gosh, this is a connection I can feel, although there was no individual, nothing like that. It was just feeling through my fingertips. Mm-hmm. Now, that was for me. Now, was it for you when you're inside this mound and seeing these things?
For me, it wasn't necessarily like an electric type feeling. It was more of just a lightness that just came. Because I feel like sometimes in the daily basis, I struggle with like being anxious or being worried. But in that moment that we were having these connections, I felt like almost from my feet up, like everything just lifting from me. And these burdens of like normal everyday life suddenly meant nothing. And that there was like a lightness to just my step, my heart didn't feel like, I have that cinched up anxious thing. It just all lifted from me. and it was a sense of purpose and acceptance, and all these is almost like playing in my mind, almost like a bunch of movie montages, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
you can kind of envision all the different generations of love and perseverance that existed so that I could be right there in that moment. And that was such a strong anchor. Like, I felt light as a feather, but there was no way I was going to float off the earth, because I was grounded right there in that knowledge that all that love and work had gone into, propelling us into the future. And that was just a sense of confirmation and validation all at once, and it felt really, really good. And we all just walked around that day with this almost, taller step kind of feeling. I felt a little taller and a little bit light, and like anything in the world I was capable of, confronting or handling, because I came from this.
Yeah, it sounded like things remained in proportion. It wasn't, blinding light kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it was just...
As you walked around, did you encounter any other people, either native or non-native?
Oh, yeah, there was definitely a lot of non-native folks there. It was a Saturday, so I think that, like, there's plenty of folks kind of taking, like, different trips for different reasons. And I even kind of, at one point, walked by this group that was with one of the park rangers, and the park ranger was kind of telling the group, well, the Mvskoke people were, and they were, like, pointing out that they built these mounds, and they built these, big, moved lots of earth, and they were had a lot of ingenuity, and they knew what they were doing. And it just kind of struck me that they kept talking about it like in the past tense. And so my kids and I, of course, are rocking our Mvskoke media gear, like our Mvskoke res shirts, and because we're just like all, like I love that we have these cool T-shirts, and I just wanted to take a family picture of us all wearing them there. And at one point I just kind of walked by and I was like, the Mvskoke people are, like, we're still here. And like, we represent that too. So here we are, some people from Okmulgee, Oklahoma, who visit the Okmulgee Mountains in Macon, Georgia. And I think that kind of like blew a few people's minds. They were...
Let's wrap it up with that. We can't, that's just really wonderful.
Yeah.
Hey, folks, we're still here.
Yeah.
We've got a few announcements we'd like to share in the last couple of minutes here. First of all, going on today at River Spirit Casino, there's the hiring event. 200 career opportunities with the nation, health, and casinos. Excuse me. That's at River Spirit, going on from 9 until 3 here today, and with door prizes and things. And you might want to check it out. There's some excellent benefits there.
And the 46th annual Mvskoke Creek Nation Festival is still set for September 23rd through the 26th. As long as we don't have any new news on that, we got festival happening.
Right, and let's hope this virus doesn't kill this one too.
Yeah.
And I think I just jinxed it.
Oh, I know. I'm so tired of COVID.
Yeah, and the Living Legends ceremony will be held on September the 23rd at the River Spirit. It starts the events of the Nations Festival. It begins the 23rd through the 26th. So you can nominate a citizen who's brought recognition and made an outstanding part of their life.
The Back to School Bash is being held on Friday, August 20th at the Claude Cox Omniplex from 4 to 7. The registration deadline was Friday, August 13th. So if you got registered, be sure to show up on the 20th. They're going to be giving away a limited number of backpacks, supplies, and cold water.
Okay, we want to say, Mado, thank you for being with us here today. For Angel and myself, we'll catch you later on.